you're here, ready to go deep. Awesome.
Let's do it.
Today, we're tackling a really pivotal moment in world history. It's the 19th century, and we're looking at how Western powers interacted with, well, two huge players in Asia, China, and Japan. Yeah, what's fascinating and kind of the core of our deep dive today is just how differently these two nations responded to really similar challenges from the West.
Absolutely. Understanding that contrast, it really helps explain the very different paths they took into the modern world. So our mission really is to unpack these big events and concepts clearly.
Okay, so let's start with China. Their initial encounters with Western powers. Things got heated pretty quickly, didn't they? The Opium Wars.
Yeah, the Opium Wars are crucial. So opium itself, it's a drug, right? Highly addictive, comes from the poppy plant.
And how did it become such a flashpoint?
Well, British merchants, they were buying loads of tea and silk from China, but China wasn't buying much back. So Britain had this big trade deficit.
Ah, okay.
And they found something the Chinese market did want, unfortunately: opium. They started smuggling huge amounts of it in.
Which, predictably, caused massive problems.
Of absolutely devastating. Widespread addiction, social disruption, economic problems. It really tore at the fabric of society.
So the Chinese government tried to stop it.
They did. They tried to ban it, confiscate it, crack down on the trade. But Britain, protecting its merchants and this, frankly, lucrative trade, pushed back militarily.
And China? They didn't fare well in that conflict.
No, they didn't. Their military at that time just wasn't a match for Britain's industrialized forces. That defeat was a real wake-up call, showing a significant military gap.
And it led directly to the Treaty of Nanjing in 1842. You hear this described as the first unequal treaty. What does that mean, unequal?
It means exactly what it sounds like. The terms were heavily stacked against China. Britain dictated the terms, basically.
Okay, so what were some of the key things China had to agree to?
Well, first off, they had to give up Hong Kong Island to Britain.
Wow, just hand over territory.
Yep. And it stayed under British control for over 150 years. They also had to open up several major ports like Canton and Shanghai, specifically for British trade and residents.
So more access for Britain. Any other major points?
A really big one was granting extraterritorial rights to foreigners.
Extraterritorial rights.
Yeah.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. It basically meant that British citizens and later citizens of other Western nations, if they committed a crime in China, they wouldn't be tried under Chinese law in Chinese courts.
Wait, so if a British guy committed murder in Shanghai, he'd be tried by British law?
Essentially, yes. By British consular courts. Imagine how that felt to the Chinese authorities and people.
Like their own laws didn't matter in their own country. That must have caused huge resentment.
Huge. It completely undermined Chinese sovereignty and authority. And remember, while all this external pressure is happening, China's also dealing with massive internal problems.
Right, like the Taiping Rebellion, which kicked off around 1850.
Exactly. This was an enormous civil war, one of the deadliest in history, actually.
Who was leading it? What was the goal?
It was led by a man named Hong Zhuquan. He had these visions and believed he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
His goal was radical: overthrow the ruling Qing dynasty and establish a whole new heavenly kingdom of great peace based on his interpretation of Christianity and ideas about communal property and equality.
So a massive internal rebellion aimed at completely changing China, happening at the same time they're struggling with foreign powers.
It was incredibly destabilizing. Millions died, maybe tens of millions. And it massively weakened the Qing government, making it even harder for them to deal effectively with the West.
And then, later in the century, you have the Dowager Emperor Cixi becoming really powerful.
Yes, Cixi, a very influential figure in the late Qing court, effectively ruling China for decades.
What was her approach to all this foreign pressure and the calls for change? Was she a reformer?
Not really, no. She was quite conservative, actually. While some officials saw the need to modernize, to adopt Western tech and methods to strengthen China, the self-strengthening movement, Cixi and many others were wary.
Wary of what? Losing Chinese culture. Losing power.
Probably a bit of both. They feared that too much Western influence would erode traditional Chinese values and, yes, potentially undermine their own authority and the Qing dynasty itself.
So a resistance to the kind of deep systemic reforms that might have helped China push back more effectively.
It certainly seemed to limit their ability to adapt, which leads us towards the end of the century and the open door policy. This was proposed by the U.S. in 1899.
The open door sounds positive, maybe, like opening up opportunities.
Well, the U.S. framing was about ensuring equal trading rights for all nations in China. They were worried other powers, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Japan were carving China up into exclusive spheres of influence.
Ah, so these spheres,
Yeah.
like mini colonies almost, where one foreign power had special privileges.
Pretty much. Specific regions where a particular foreign nation had dominant economic rights, like building railways or opening mines.
So the U.S. open door policy was trying to stop that total carve-up.
Yes, partly to protect U.S. interests, ensuring they wouldn't be shut out. But while it maybe prevented China from being formally partitioned like Africa was, it also kind of solidified the idea that foreign powers collectively had extensive economic rights across China. China's door was open, but foreign powers held the keys.
So China's sovereignty is just eroding more and more. You have unequal treaties, extraterritoriality, spheres of influence.
Exactly. And all this frustration, this anti-foreign feeling, the sense of humiliation, it eventually boils over.
The Boxer Rebellion, 1899-1901.
Right. This was a violent, popular uprising. The Boxers, the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists, were fiercely anti-foreign and anti-Christian.
What were they trying to achieve?
They wanted to drive all foreigners out of China. They attacked foreign missionaries, Chinese Christians, foreign diplomats, businesses, besieged the foreign legations in Beijing.
And how did the foreign powers react?
They formed an international alliance. 8 nations, including Japan, sent in troops, crushed the rebellion brutally, and occupied Beijing.
And the result for China, even worse.
Even worse, China was forced to pay massive reparations and accept even more concessions, further cementing foreign control and weakening the Qing dynasty, which was already on its last legs.
So if we sum up China's response, it's resistance, yes, but often ineffective, coupled with devastating internal turmoil like the Taiping Rebellion, leadership hesitant about deep reform leading to defeat, unequal treaties, and ultimately significant foreign control over its affairs. A really difficult century.
A period of profound crisis, absolutely. Now let's pivot to Japan. They faced similar pressures, right? Foreign ships showing up demanding access.
Yeah, Japan had been largely isolated for centuries under the Tokugawa shogunate. Then Commodore Matthew Perry sails in.
Exactly. U.S. Navy Commodore Perry arrives in 1853 and then again in 1854 with these powerful black steamships, the Kyrfoon, the black ships.
Intimidating.
Very. And the message was clear. Open up for trade or face the consequences. Japan, seeing what happened in China with the Opium War, realized they couldn't resist militarily.
So they signed the Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854, similar to China being forced to open ports.
Similar in that it was forced, yes. It opened 2 ports to American ships for supplies and allowed an American consul. But the reaction within Japan was totally different from China's.
How so?
This external shock acted as a catalyst. It exposed the weakness of the shogunate and intensified internal debate. It led fairly quickly to a major political upheaval.
The Meiji Restoration, starting around 1868.
Precisely. This wasn't just a change in government, it was a revolution. The old feudal system under the shogun was dismantled, and power was nominally restored to the Emperor Meiji.
But the real drivers were reformers, weren't they?
Yes, a group of ambitious, often younger samurai and nobles who realized Japan had to modernize and fast if it wanted to avoid China's fate. Their slogan was Fukoku Kihei, enrich the country, strengthen the military.
So instead of resisting Western ideas, they actively sought them out.
Actively, aggressively, strategically. They sent missions abroad to study Western governments, industries, education systems, military structures, everything.
And they brought those ideas back and implemented them.
At incredible speed. They adopted a constitution, albeit one that still gave the emperor significant power. They built railways, telegraph lines, modern factories. They completely overhauled the army and navy, modeling them on German and British lines. They instituted universal education.
Wow, a top-to-bottom transformation sounds incredibly deliberate.
It was. The Meiji oligarchs were determined to make Japan strong enough to revise the unequal treaties it had also been forced to sign and to stand as an equal on the world stage. And crucially, they managed to do this while maintaining national unity and avoiding the kind of massive internal rebellion China faced.
And did this rapid modernization pay off?
Dramatically. The most stunning proof came with the Russo-Japanese War in 1904-1905.
Japan versus Russia, a major European power.
Yes. They fought over influence in Korea and Manchuria, and Japan won, decisively, on land and at sea.
That must have been Shocking globally.
Absolutely seismic. It was the first time in modern history an Asian nation had defeated a major European power. It completely shifted perception.
It validated their whole modernization project, didn't it?
Totally. It elevated Japan to the... It also inspired nationalist movements across Asia who saw it was possible to defeat European colonizers.
But Japan's rise didn't just stop at self-strengthening, did it? They started to have imperial ambitions of their own.
That's the next step. Having modernized and built up its strength, Japan began to act like the Western powers it had learned from. It started building its own empire.
Starting with Korea.
Yeah, after defeating China in a war in 1894-95 and then Russia, Japan tightened its grip on Korea, eventually annexing it outright in 1910, making it a colony.
So Japan went from being forced open to becoming a colonizer itself in just a few decades.
It's an astonishingly rapid transformation. They became the dominant power in East Asia, exerting influence even within China itself, joining the other foreign powers in exploiting China's weakness.
So if we put them side by side, the contrast is just incredibly stark.
It really is. China, facing internal strife and led by figures often resistant to fundamental change, struggles, gets weaker, and falls under increasing foreign control.
While Japan, facing similar initial threats, undergoes this radical internal revolution, embraces modernization wholeheartedly, and emerges as a powerful, independent, even imperial nation.
That's the essential difference. Adaptability versus resistance, maybe. Centralized, determined reform versus internal division and hesitancy.
It really does show how much internal factors, leadership, social cohesion, willingness to change matter when dealing with external challenges.
Definitely. It wasn't just about the West imposing its will. It was very much about how these two societies responded internally.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. The core takeaway is the dramatically different paths taken by China and Japan in the face of Western pressure. China's combination of resistance, internal problems, and reluctance to fully modernize left it weakened and vulnerable.
Whereas Japan's Meiji Restoration involved a conscious, rapid, and comprehensive embrace of Western models, industrial, military, political agenda, which transformed it into a major power, capable of defending its independence and pursuing its own imperial agenda.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How a nation's internal setup, its leadership, its willingness to adapt, how critical that is for navigating a changing world and maintaining sovereignty. Are there lessons there, maybe, for how countries face global pressures today?
That's a great question to ponder. History rarely repeats exactly, but understanding these dynamics, how different societies process and react to external shocks, and the need for change, it definitely offers food for thought about contemporary challenges.
Absolutely. So, to help you lock in what we've discussed, here are a few self-assessment questions to think about.
First, what were the main terms of that Treaty of Nanjing forced on China?
Second, how did the Dowager Empress Sexy influence China's path during this period?
Third, what were some of the key reforms during Japan's Meiji era?
Fourth, why was the Russo-Japanese War such a significant event?
And finally, maybe the big one. In your own words, what was the biggest difference in how China and Japan tackled the challenge of Western imperialism?
Mulling those over should really help cement the key points from this deep dive.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration of China and Japan's contrasting histories. Hope it shed some light on this critical period.
Until next time, keep asking questions.